In this video, I'm going to be talking about writing a summary. This is such an important skill for people when they're studying, but it's something that a lot of people find really hard. The most common thing that I hear and that I see from students is when they go to write out their notes, they rewrite out the whole thing. And they say, I couldn't summarize it. I couldn't leave any of it out because it all seemed important. If that's you, I'm going to show you how to overcome that problem. I've made up a little news story here. Before I start anything else, I'm just going to say that if I look at a bunch of text like that, especially when it's typed out, I find it really difficult to learn. What I want to do is I want to take that text and I want to shrink it down. I want to make it into much less than what it is there. As I said before, the problem that a lot of people have is when they start to read through it, they say every point in there, every sentence in there is important. Which bits do I leave out? And the secret that I'm going to let you in on is that you don't leave any of the bits out. All of the information in there you need to have. What you can leave out is a lot of the unimportant words around the main points. And what you should end up with in your summary is all of the main points. So writing in point form is going to be very important. And you're going to end up with all of those main points, but without a lot of the words that aren't really necessary. Okay, so this first paragraph that I've written, I've now summarised just into point form. Instead of saying on Wednesday the 17th of September, I can just write Wednesday 17 September. I don't need to use the word on, and I don't need to use the word the for the Minister of Finance. And I don't need to say that he announced a change in policy. That's going to be really obvious to me when I start looking at my points. I know that businesses which import products from overseas. So I don't need to say that they import products from overseas. I just have to use the word import. And I don't have to say these changes will come into effect. If I just put the note that it's the beginning of the financial year, I'll know that the policy is coming in at the beginning of the financial year. So two really important things that I've done. Number one is writing in point form, and that's really helpful to do. The second thing is I've just removed unnecessary words. When I end up with my main points, they're the main points of the story that I'm telling, and I don't need to retell a story word for word exactly how it is written down. I just need to be able to communicate the idea of the story, and I do that by knowing the main points that are made. I've gone through and I've summarised the rest of the article as I would. And what I can say is that throughout all of that article, every point in there that is important is written down in my summary. And you can already see that I've used much less words. For me, as I said before, looking at all of that written text at the top, I'd find it very difficult to learn. But when I've shrunk it down into just these main points, I'm going to find it much easier to learn. Because I have these points down the bottom, if I tell the story following just these points, I'm going to be telling the same story that is up the top there. I'm not going to be doing it word for word, but I am going to get everything that I need to say in the correct order. So I'm going to cover over the bit that's written in text at the top. You should follow the text at the top as I read it out. You'll see that I won't get it word for word, but you'll see I pretty much tell the right story. I'm going to just be covering this over, and I'm just going to look at the dot points down the bottom. And just using the dot points, this is what I would say that article is saying. On Wednesday the 17th of September, Mark Simon, who is the Minister for Finance, announced changes to the policy which impacts businesses which import products from overseas. These changes are going to come into effect at the beginning of the next financial year. In addition to the changes in import taxes, which affect the costs to businesses, they're also going to have the responsibility to record and collect the taxes as they're passed on to consumers. It's especially going to impact smaller businesses who are already burdened by the fact that they need to collect GST. In order to assist these small businesses, Mark Simon also announced that he would have a 24-hour advice line. Now, I didn't get it exactly right, and I had some bits where I got stuck on there a little bit, but that was my first reading through. If there was something in my notes and I found it difficult to know what the article said, I should be going back to the article, learning it again, and for a first go, I'm sure you would see I got it pretty close to everything that I need to know just from the bottom information that was down there. As I study it, there's going to be bits and pieces that get more and more obvious to me, and I won't need to put them in my study notes. So I'm actually going to be able to summarise my summary notes. And this is another important skill. When I first start studying, I will make study notes like this, but as I study, I'm going to make them shorter, even shorter again. Okay, so now I've summarised my summary notes, and you can really see the difference in the big chunk of text I have at the top there and the small amount of information that I have down the bottom here. I'm going to cover over the top section again, and I'm going to retell the story. So on Wednesday, the 17th of September, the Minister for Finance, Mark Simon, said there's going to be a change in the policy which impact businesses who import products from overseas. The changes will come into effect at the start of the next financial year. As well as the changes to a range of import taxes which will affect the costs of imports into businesses, they're also going to have the responsibility of recording and collecting the taxes as they are passed on to customers. The changes are especially going to affect smaller businesses, and many of those are already burdened by the requirements of collecting GST. And in order to assist these smaller businesses, Mark Simon announced that it was going to be a 24-hour advice hotline to help them. Okay, again, I didn't get the full story, but I got enough of the story that I need to be able to tell. The important thing is that when it comes to studying, instead of studying that top box, I only have to study the stuff that's written down here. And it's kind of like taking that big file, zipping it into something really small, putting that into my head, and then when I get into the exam, I can unzip it again and turn it back out into a big story because I know the main facts. Okay, and then as I've studied this more and more, one last time, I've shrunk it way down. In my studying, there's bits of facts that have just become really obvious to me. I know that the whole story is about a change in policy for businesses importing products. I've just put the word importing in there, and it's going to be a clue that leads me into the rest of it. Things down here like just writing 24, which I meant to circle, not erase. Just putting there 24. That's going to give me a clue. And I know that's going to be talking about a 24-hour advice line. So again, I've covered up the top, and I'm just going to use the facts down here. And I'm going to use these facts to tell that story. So I'll look at the bottom here. You can follow up the top to see how close I get to doing this. On Wednesday, the 17th of September, Mark Simon, who is the Minister for Finance, announced that he was changing a policy that's going to impact businesses which import products from overseas. The changes will come into effect at the start of the next financial year. As well as changes to import taxes, which will affect cost of businesses, they're also going to have the extra responsibility of recording and collecting the taxes as they're passed on to consumers. These changes are especially going to impact small businesses who already have the burden of collecting GST, and in order to help them, Mark Simon said he would set up a 24-hour advice line. Okay, so I hope you can see, you can really start to see this very small amount of writing down the bottom has all the information in it that I need, and it's much easier to learn than all of that information at the top. And this should be an important thing. The next step, which I would need to do, was just to learn these points here and memorise them so I could recall them without looking at them at all, and then I can tell the whole story just out of my head. And just instead of learning this whole story, all I have to do is learn this story here. And then when I walk into an exam, I can tell the top story just by using the information in that bottom story.